Hey everybody, I'm Susie Finkbeiner, and this is the Messy Desk, except you can't see the messy desk, which is good for you. And this is my friend Kelli Stuart, and we are here to talk about writing and acting because we have both done some acting. Kelli, will you tell us a little bit about your acting that you've been doing?
Yes. So I kind of stumbled into it a little bit. When I first went to college, I went as a musical theater major. Like I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I quickly realized that personality wise, I was not cut out for the cutthroat world of the theater. It was just very intimidating to me. The audition process was very intimidating. Competing against my fellow peers for a role, it was much too stressful for me. So I segued into writing and majored in professional writing, wanting to write books, and I have been able to do that. But there was always a part of me that felt like, man, I loved performing, and I felt like maybe I missed out a little bit by not trying harder. And a few years ago, a friend of mine who is a screenwriter came to me and said, "Hey, I've written the screenplay and I'm working really hard to get it made into a movie. Would you just read over it, maybe make some suggestions on character development or whatever?" So I did that, and that was really fun. And then at the end, he was like, "Hey, would you want to, come in maybe when we film and be an extra?" Or he's like, "I have this one role that's got 4 or 5 lines. Would you want to come in and read for that?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, that'd be so fun." So he was like, "Well, okay, great. Technically, I cannot hire you. The director has to do that. So I'm going to send you some lines, read them, film yourself, send them to the director. We'll see what he says." So like 2 weeks later, I got a call from the director and he was like, "Hey, I really loved your reading, but I feel like you'd be a better fit for this supporting role. Would you be interested in that?" And I was like, "I've never done this before," right? And goes, "Oh, I think you'll be great. And, if you're interested, we'd love to bring you on in the supporting role." So they cast me in the supporting role. And we filmed in 2021 a movie called The Author, oddly enough. And it was so fun. I mean, I just had such a great time. We filmed down in Texas. They flew me down there for 2 different weeks, and um, I just had so much fun. And I really thought, wow, this is like a once in a lifetime experience. I'm so glad I got to experience. I felt like it was the kindness of the Lord of like giving me this gift of getting to do this thing that I'd always wanted to do, but thought that I never would. And I was going to be content with just doing that one thing. And The Author released in 2022. It got really nice reviews, and it's now you can
You
watch it
got to
on
walk the red
Amazon.
carpet, right?
Yeah, yeah, we did a big like red carpet debut. I think they did 3 premieres. And yeah, you can watch it on Prime or Apple TV now. You can look up The Author and watch it. And we're just really proud of it. It was a really, really fun experience, and it turned into a really beautiful movie. They did a great job. So then last year, this same screenwriter friend and I started collaborating on another project where I'm writing the novel and he's writing the screenplay. And kind of in the middle of it, he's like, "Hey, I have this idea for another film, and it's going to be low budget, but I would really love to make it. And would you want to help me get this made?" And I was like, "Yes." I just think it's so fun. So I was going to kind of serve as in a producer role of just kind of helping him do the auditions, let's hire the talent, do all this. And there was one role when he sent me the screenplay I was reading, and I was like, "Man, I feel like I could do that role. Could I read for this?" And he was like, "I'm the director and the writer. You're hired." So I jumped in on a supporting role in that film as well. And then I'm also serving as producer for the executive producer for that one. And it's been really fun just to learn even the back end of making movies and storytelling, and seeing it all come together. And would this character really respond that way? And we hired some really talented actors for that film. So it is in the final editing phase. It's tentatively called The Last Parable right now, but that could change. We're tossing around different title ideas, but um, it's a really beautiful movie. I think it's going to be really impactful. So I'm super excited, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to release it and do a premiere sometime this spring, maybe early summer.
It is so exciting.
It's
Yeah.
really fun.
Yeah. I've not done much film. I've done like maybe one or two things. And um it's different than live theater. Um and just that you have to keep doing and redoing and redoing and redoing. Um and yeah, I it's been so long I don't know if I could do it anymore, but
Yeah. It's
it's
more understated, I think, film, you have to communicate emotion in a much more subtle way, whereas theater, you have to really, like, you have, number one, you have one shot. I think theater is actually harder than film, but I mean, you have one shot and you have to really like nail the emotion, whatever that emotion is. But I think either one is just another form, and storytelling is such a generic term. I sometimes hate to use it, but it is another form of communicating a story, communicating a theme, communicating life, um, through performance.
one thing that I found last year I was in a performance of Hamlet um in a very small theater. And so we could be more subtle a little bit. But Hamlet's not a subtle play. And one thing you said about in theater getting the emotion right, one thing that I found in 8 performances is how the emotion could change from performance to performance, um,
Mhm.
based on the energy of the audience, which was, one night I played Gertrude, so I was Hamlet's mother. And there's a
Mhm.
scene in which Hamlet gets violent and scares his mother, and there's a lot of truth being told in very aggressive ways. And there's lots of yelling and screaming. And one night, the audience made the actor who played Hamlet and I, the audience made us angry because they were um, not a great audience. They were talking
Mhm.
and the scene is traumatic, but we looked at each other and I could tell that he was thinking we are going to make this so much more traumatic. And it was explosive. But I think that that's something that is, it translates across all storytelling mediums, I think, is just getting the emotion and realizing that it can change and it can grow and expand. um there we were just talking about how acting and writing intersect in a lot of ways. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. As much as I felt like maybe I missed out, because I wasn't brave enough to major in theater or whatever, I'm really, really glad that I wrote books before I did any professional acting, because I think that writing books gave me a really good foundation on character development, but on also just tapping into that emotion. When you're writing a character, you have to be able to communicate emotion through words. You have to be able to paint pictures with words for a reader. And acting is very similar, only, you're using your body and your expressions and your tone of voice to paint those pictures and to pull out that emotion. And so I feel like writing kind of gave me a really good base for acting, because I have an understanding of character arc and the inflection of voice. And so that's been really fun. And vice versa, now as I am working on a new book, I feel like, having had the experience of making a couple of movies, um, I'm seeing the book almost like a film, and I think it's going to make the book stronger. So I think that they go really, really well hand in hand.
One thing that has often been said about John Steinbeck is that he wrote with a cinematic eye,
Mhm.
because he knew his books had a good chance of becoming movies. And so that actually made him a better writer, because he tapped into all of the imagery and all of the the beauty around him and the positioning of characters. And that's really interesting that you said that. Another thing that I think is interesting is that the two of us, if you know anything about the Enneagram people, I'm just going to get a little nerdy for a second. We're both fours, which means that we are highly sensitive. We have easy access to our emotions, which I think probably benefits us both in acting and writing, because we don't mind going there and feeling it. Yeah.
And I think that's why you see so many actors also write, they either write screenplays or they write books. It's very common, I think, for actors to also be writers, because there is that constant influx of story in your mind, and super imaginative, but also that being in tune with your feelings and your emotions, and maybe slightly dramatic. So
I found that in the theater. I'm involved with a theater called Master Arts Theater, and it's like 7 minutes down the road. It's very convenient. And most of the actors who are regulars there, they're also writers, and they write fantasy, they write plays, they write all kind of poetry. It is interesting, and just how many arts can just overlap in use for us, and how it's really important for us to have a secondary or even a third outlet, because writing work, but acting is a little different. And music, I know we both do music, which I know for you has been so therapeutic and such a sweet thing that you share with the sweetest little guy Sawyer. I love those videos so much.
I know my little boy is nonverbal, and he just loves music, and he loves to sit at the piano. And so honestly, I didn't know how to play piano until 2020 COVID. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'm going to learn how to play piano. I watched a ton of YouTube videos, and then when I would play, he would just lay his ear on the keys and listen to the song and the vibration. And so it's just become a sweet little thing we do together now. He'll grab my hand every day and just pull me to the computer, and he's like pointing at it. So
And I love that you share those videos. I really do. They're a nice timeline cleanser. For sometimes the social media gets dark, and ugh. So anything like that presents joy is very much welcome. Kelli, can you tell me some more about the books that you've written, just so that everyone can go out and buy them? I almost dropped my Sorry.
My first novel was set in World War II Soviet Ukraine. I grew up, I went to Ukraine on several mission trips in high school. I studied the Russian language in college. I lived in Ukraine in college to study. And so my first book was just based on the true stories of World War II veterans from Ukraine. And that was kind of my foot in the door. And it's still one of my favorite books. And, unfortunately, because of the war in Ukraine, it's still my best-selling book.
And one thing that I will say about this book is, if you were deeply moved by Schindler's List, you must read this book, because you will be, it is a heart-wrenching book, but it is so important. It is very important.
Yeah, especially now. I mean, it really does give you some context for what's happening between Russia and Ukraine even today. And so that was my first book. I indie published my 2 second books, and I love them so much. So A Silver Willow by the Shore was actually, I have a lovely endorsement on the cover of that book from my dear friend Susie. But yeah, it's a generational tale of 3 women, one from the gulags of Siberia to 1980s Moscow to modern day America, and how their lives intersect. My third book is a circus novel, and it's called The Fabulous Freaks of Monsieur Beaumont. And it's all about the circus freaks of this wild circus. And that actually might be one of my favorite books I've ever written. It's my least selling book, but I just love it so much. And people that read it always give me sweet compliments on it. And then my most recent release came out in 2022. It's called The Master Craftsman, and it is a treasure hunt. It's following the life of Peter Carl Fabergé and his creation of the Fabergé Easter eggs for the imperial family. And then it's a modern day story of a treasure hunter looking for a missing Fabergé Easter egg. So that one was really fun to write. It's just kind of like National Treasure meets the Soviet Union.
Yeah, and I like that there are two different timelines in that one, just to really to round out the story. And to one thing I like about historical fiction that has two timelines is that we get more of a sense that history isn't that long ago, and how it impacts us today. And one thing I really appreciate about Kelli's writing is that you are not going to grab one of her books and be like, but didn't she write about this last time? Because they're all so different. And she uses such inventive storytelling in each of them. So if you haven't read any of Kelli's books, please go find them, buy them. Amazon, Baker Bookhouse, book list, not book list, bookshop, or your local bookseller, I'm sure, can order them. And if you have read them, then tell your friends to read them, because the way that writers get to continue writing is by book sales. And that's just the harsh reality, but that's how it is. Also tell your libraries to order them.
Yes, yes, yes. I do appreciate that.
I am so glad that you were like the first video for the messy desk whole experiment thing.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm really glad it's you, because I feel like we've been on this journey together for a long time.
No, you've been such an encourager and a supporter through, you're so good at supporting other authors, which I'm really grateful for. And so, yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording now. I have to find the button. I'm bad at this, people. Okay.